Good afternoon and welcome to Women's Atheists UNLOAD here on Skeptic Haven. I am your host and heretic Ryan, and today I will be joined by my co-host Sunny, and we get to sit down and chat with Sydney, who is an ex-fundie that has learned to tell her stories in a way that shows resilience through the healing power of laughter and storytelling. Stick around to hear more of her story.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take sh**. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take sh**. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take sh**. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that.
Welcome back to Skeptic Haven, where we enjoy having open and honest conversations to help empower people. And Sunny, hello. I would say that it sounds like Sidney Davis Jr. agrees with that sentiment.
I would say so. Hey, Sydney.
Hey, what's up? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. She is a stand-up comedian, storyteller, a writer who has captivated audiences across the country with her wit, humor, and vulnerability. Raised in a religious environment in Arkansas, Sydney bravely embarked on a journey of self-discovery and healing at such a young age, ultimately finding her voice and passion in the world of comedy. So happy to have you here.
That was the most beautiful introduction I've ever had in my whole life. That was wonderful. I feel like I learned a little bit about me just then.
Pat her on the back.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, no, really, we are excited to have you here. We love having empowered people, especially knowing that, they've come from a religious background and are now kind of pursuing something that might have been unknown to them beforehand,
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I love that you have this platform. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I'm like shocked that it took me this long to find out about it, but I'm a fan. I'm already a fan.
Yeah, we're doing all right over here, chugging along. Yeah. Sunny is such a great co-host, and we will probably just be giving you the back and forth with questions and whatnot.
Perfect.
But you feel free to answer however you need to. But what I found so fascinating when I first saw your story, like I said to you backstage, is that at the age of 16, you decided to go jet off from Arkansas to Chicago, was it?
Yeah.
And pursue like this career in comedy.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was, yes. So like I knew it was interesting while it was happening, but I didn't realize like just how bizarre that is until I was a lot older. Because I came from a very supportive household. I wasn't one of those kids that like picked something up and quit every 10 seconds. Like my brother and I have always been very, when we start something, we see it through until, we get as good at it as possible. So I basically realized one day when I was like 14, I was a huge fan of Saturday Night Live. I realized that was somebody's job. It like occurred to me that somebody got to do that. They got to go to work and do that. Yeah.
Right.
And so I was like, how does somebody do that? And my mom was like, I don't know. And so we looked it up and we found out that the majority of the people on SNL come from the second city, which there's a Chicago one, there's a Toronto one. At the time, there was a Hollywood one. Unfortunately, that one did not make it through the pandemic. And so we were like, why don't we go check out some second city shows? So I believe it was Thanksgiving break that year when I was probably in 9th or 10th grade that we went and we saw a show, and it was just fantastic. Like watching these people do improv and sketch comedy, I was like, this is what I've been trying to do with my life, but I didn't know there was a name for it. I didn't know there was a platform for it. I had no idea. I just really liked writing stuff, and I really liked making people laugh, and I really liked just coming up with stuff off the cuff. But where I was from, that was theater. But I didn't feel like theater. Like I'm not a good actress. I'm not an actress at all. Like that's not, when people try to get me to act, I'm like, I promise you, you don't want that. And so I knew acting, I thought acting was like all you could do. I thought that was like the only kind of sphere similar to what I was looking for. But when I saw them, I was like this is it. Like sketch comedy.
I can do that.
Yeah, improv, stand up, like this is what I've been wanting to do. So we saw 2 or 3 shows while we were there. And at the Second City, there's a Starbucks on North and Wells, like right there in the same building. And we were at that Starbucks the next morning, and sitting there was a gentleman who I had seen on the show the night before. So I was geeking out because to me that was like my version of a celebrity, and it took me like 10 minutes to be able to finally go up and talk to him. But I went up and I finally just asked him, if you had advice for anybody who does what I saw you do last night, what would you say? And he said, I can't give you better advice than to move here. He's like, if you're serious about it, if that's really what you want to do, you have to live here. You have to immerse yourself in it. You have to get the connections that you need. I'm sure he meant when I was a grown up. Like, I'm sure he meant when, you know what I mean? I don't think he meant like tomorrow. I think he meant like
Right.
when you're like an adult, like when you're out of high school.
Right.
Because even though I was like 15 when I talked to this guy, I probably looked like I was 13 or 4, or like maybe even 12. I still have the picture from that day. Because I made him take a picture with me, of course. And I'm like wearing a Second City shirt. I'm being that person. You know what I mean? And so then I talked to my mom about it. And my mom knows that I'm a very dedicated person. Like even when I was in theater and I was in like competitive acting and stuff at that time, but I was only doing comedy stuff. Like, don't get me wrong. I cannot act. I can't stress to you enough how much. And she said, that sounds pretty serious. Is this something you really want to do? And I said, yeah, this is really like, it's just speaking to me like more than anything else. And she said, okay, she was a teacher at the time. And she said, I can hold my job. I can take a sabbatical for 1 year. So we can do 1 year. And after that year, I'm coming back. Whether you're coming back with me, that's, yet to be determined. But the rules were I had to keep my grades up. I had to get a job to help like pay for like the move. And like we were all going to kind of just like help support the lifestyle up in Chicago. And if either one of those slipped, if I started like skipping out on work or my grades were failing or something like that, we were moving back. Like no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So then my brother, who had just started college, he was like, well, don't go without me. And so he came with us. So we all three went there. He was in school in Arkansas and he transferred to a school in Chicago. And he's still there. I'm in Nashville now, but he's actually still there. He met his spouse there as well. But and it just took off from there. I just caught this bug. And so I got some scholarships to take the teen classes. And then I took the adult classes. And then around like the age of 25, I was like spamming them with my resume the whole time. I was like, hire me. I want to work here. Hire me. So they hired me when I was like 25. And then I've been on the faculty ever since. And then when I was there in person, I was doing like stand-up shows and storytelling shows and different events and stuff like that for them. It just took off.
No, that's so impressive. That is impressive.
I know. And like coming from a funny background, like that's just something we could never do. So I'm like looking at it at astonishment. And even still that you were raised in that religious environment, but still just kind of had that ability, that it really is amazing. Why do you think that it's such a passion for you? I mean, was it?
I think so. My dad, I'm sorry, did I interrupt you? I did not mean to interrupt
No,
you.
I'm just trying to understand, like you just went for it. Like, what was the burning desire, do you think, the connection?
So my dad was always in theater before he passed away. He was an artist. He was an illustrator. He was involved in theater. He was in debate. And my mom has always been a writer. She's been a journalist. She's been like a public speaking professor. So I think it was just the two minds like melding. I think it was just the genetics on both sides. Love to talk, love to make people laugh. And I thought up until that time, I wanted to be a cartoonist. My dream was to have like a syndicated comic strip. So humor had always been part of my thing. I was just drawing and like putting it on paper and wanting it to be in the newspaper. But then I realized one day, like, I can tell those jokes. I can write my skits and like tell them out loud or something like that, as opposed to assigning them to little characters. And so I think humor has always just been part of it. And I mentioned backstage, it also helps when you don't know you have ADHD until you're like 30 years old. I literally got diagnosed like over the pandemic. So that definitely helped. I'm not going to lie.
Do it all.
Yes. Yeah. And so my brother is the more serious one. He's a playwright, very, very talented. He directs theater. He was an actor for a while. And so I think he got like the serious side. And I think I got the like goofy, non-theatrical, more comedy side. I don't know, communicating to people in a way that makes them laugh that's just how I communicate. Even when I'm talking about something like really messed up, like I just do it in a way like right now, like I just do it in a way that like I laugh even when it's a terrible story.
Yeah. I think dark humor is probably just kind of this natural thing that you kind of have whenever I don't know. I just feel like when you've just from infancy heard these interesting, weird stories, it just kind of makes it, and then you have life that kind of just fills the gaps,
Yes.
and life isn't
Yes.
perfect.
Yes.
So you just have this, at least I do. I just have this mind that can go anywhere and everywhere. I'm just very,
Yes. Yeah, and, like, so I have the religious background, but then I also have the Southern background, and not only do I have the Southern background, but I have, like the deep South Southern background, so it's like, there's material people ask me all the time, they're like, "How do you write material?" I'm like, "I don't write anything, I've never written anything in my entire life, I just record what people say around me and what they do around me, and then I just monetize it before they have a chance to." Like, that's just what happens. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I've told people stories about my family where they're like, "This is not real." And I was like, it is so real. I can prove it. I can show you how real this is. Again, didn't know that stuff was odd until I was in my teens and like doing storytelling and stand up and people were laughing. And I was like, oh, so this is funny. It turns out it's just really messed up most of the time, but it's still funny at the same time. Because don't they say trauma plus time equals comedy or something like that? Isn't that?
That is very true. Very
Yeah.
true.
Mhm.
Yep. As a fellow Southerner, I can say that I am so feeling everything you're saying.
Right.
It's amazing how just going out to work or going to Walmart can create a funny experience when you live in the South.
Literally though, yeah. And when you have like as many extended relatives as I do, just hijinks ensue. That's just what happens. Yeah. Yeah.
So what I'm really curious, you were talking about your story with your family and everybody moves out there. What is it about your family that allowed them to do that? I'm just thinking if I had asked that of my parents, they'd have been like, yeah, great, have fun at that whenever you're 20
Yeah.
or 21. What do you think it is? Especially, I agree with Ryan, especially with the Fundy background. It just seems so odd. Do you have any idea what allowed your family to support you in that way and just up and move?
Yeah. Yeah. So my mom has always been very supportive. And, when my dad was alive, he passed away very shortly after I was born. He was always an artist. And she always felt like people never took his passion sincerely. Like she remembers he would say, I want to be an artist. And people would be like, well, how are you going to pay your bills? Like, what's your real job going to be? Ha ha ha, And so it was always really important to her that she support our passions the same way that he would have if he were still alive, and the same way that she would have supported his if he were still alive. And also, even though I was like that wild, like voice too loud, outdoor voice kind of kid in every class, I was very dedicated. Like it's a very weird dynamic. It's like I was all over the place, but I was very dedicated when it came to like writing, like theater related stuff, like comedy. I took that stuff seriously, and she knew that I wasn't just one of those kids who try a million things and drop a million things and make my parents spend all this money to get me enrolled in stuff and then never practice. Like we would miss birthday parties to prepare for tournaments and stuff like that, for like competitive acting and speech and debate and stuff like that. But I think with the religious aspect, so I call myself Fundy adjacent. So my mom was very liberal when it came to like Christian women. When it comes to like Christian, I think she's Republican. She's refused my whole life to tell me her political affiliation. Like I learned at the age of like 8
a Southern
that it's
woman
like
doesn't
rude.
do that.
Right. It's like rude to ask people. So she literally won't tell me. But I know that she did not vote for Trump. But she's always told me it was none of my business and that I should stop asking. So I'm pretty sure she's Republican. Could be wrong. But she's very liberal. Like she's never had an issue with gay people. She's never had an issue with anything like that. And I think the reason that she identified with Christianity and with like the Baptist church is because the way that she was raised, of course, and the culture, right? Like the Baptist church is like steeped in Southern culture, and when that's where you were raised, that's where you feel most comfortable. People are very kind. She'd known a lot of these people her whole life, so it only made sense that she continued seeing them at church and things like that. But also, she used to say that like our talent was given to us by God, and that by using the talents that God gave us, that's like our version of like worship and our version of praising God. Everybody has like a different way to praise God. And that if you use your talent to praise God, you're basically like worshiping in your own way. So that's why like she doesn't like nasty language. She doesn't like that kind of stuff, because she says that like you're not using your talent to praise God or to thank God by doing nasty stuff like that. And so like a lot of my material, she'll be like, now, does that glorify God? Like that does not glorify God. Like, right. Like, come on.
Mom.
Like, and
Come
she's
on,
still,
Mom.
well, and also this is the same lady who let me watch any movie that was nominated for an Academy Award before I was allowed to watch The Simpsons. I didn't see The Simpsons till I was like 25, but
Oh,
I'd
wow.
seen Saving Private Ryan multiple times. It doesn't make any
Oh,
sense.
Lord Jesus.
So she supports like arts, culture, knowledge, education. She was the first person in her family to graduate high school. She was the only one to go to college and graduate from college. So there's that side of her. And then there's also like the Christian side of her that's like, make sure while you're crushing it and whatever you're doing that you're thanking God for those talents and those abilities and that opportunity. So I call myself Fundy adjacent because we went to church with Fundy people. Like I have said this a million times and I will keep saying it till the day I die. I went to church with the Duggars before they started their own church. I literally on my tombstone, it'll just be like, I think this girl went to church with the Duggars. It won't say anything else. It won't say I was a comedian.
That is my claim to fame.
Yes. And so we like, even as Christians, there were weirder Christians, you know what I mean? Like even as Christians, like we knew that there were Christians that were like more strict, you know, they had to grow their hair out long. They had to wear skirts that touched the floor. And it wasn't that they were bad. They thought a little bit different in terms of Christian than us. Like they were a little bit more serious of a Christian than us. And they wanted to like express themselves in the name of God a little bit different than us. So like I could wear pants, I could wear capris, I could wear those sorts of things. And it didn't necessarily make them like better Christians, but we recognized that there was just like a different level there. And there were a couple friends that I had like that, where you were just like, even as a 9-year-old kid, you're like, it's not that serious. Like you can, for example, I remember a friend was playing with me and we were like joking around, we were playing around, and I said, I loved Pocahontas and I wanted to be Pocahontas so bad. And I asked her, I was like, if you could be anyone you wanted to be, who would you be? And she looked at me, I swear to you, we were like first grade, second grade. And she goes, I wouldn't want to be anyone else because God made me who I am. Oh. And we were just like,
okay. Can't even play the game.
Yeah. And I remember thinking for a second, like, wait, does that make me like a bad Christian? And then I was like, nah, no, it's good. Like, it's fine.
Not that serious.
Yeah. You know, my Southern wants to just say bless, you know, just bless. My
bless
goodness.
Her heart.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Bless your heart.
Yeah. So that's kind of like, and I recognize the older I get and the more that I talk to people through my podcast who were like fundy, like fundamentalist or evangelical or like super duper religious, the more I realize like I lucked out. I got really lucky because there's a lot of things that I never would have been allowed to do had we been like fundamentalists. Like had we been closer to more of like the quiverful lifestyle, sort of like the Duggars. And I don't mean that term disrespectfully. I know some people view quiverful to be like a slang, rude term for like their type of Christian. I don't mean that at all. I'm just calling it the label that it has until it's illegal to call it that. But yeah. And so the older I get, the more I'm like, I lucked out a million times. I lucked out with the family that I come from, the parents that I have, the background that I come from, this like interest in comedy. And as somebody who works at Second City, and now I work at Third Coast Comedy Club here in Nashville, I teach adult classes with like stand-up and storytelling. And it's wild how many people are waiting until they're 60 or 70 to try out any of that stuff because nobody in their life supports them. Their spouse thinks it's dumb. Their kids think it's dumb. Their parents wouldn't let them do it. And they believed them. And to me, that's wild. That's like first.
And they can do it to themselves. I mean, I think about some things that I wanted to do and I talked myself out of it just because we have that negative self-talk sometimes. And usually that comes from the people around us that don't realize.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just wild to be 30 years younger than them and the first person in their life to be like, you're very funny, and just watch that, just like that brain. I can't even fathom what that's like. And, you know, when you're a woman who puts anything on the internet, you hear it all, right? You hear every comment. Like I've posted audio only and people called me a fat ass and told me to lose weight. Like it's ridiculous.
Oh Lord Jesus.
Yeah,
please,
literally.
I'm
like
all about it. Yeah.
Right. And so I know what negativity is like, and I know what naysayers are like, and I know what rude comments are like, but it's rare that I've ever had an experience where somebody I truly thought should believe in me has like not believed in me, you know, with the exception of like ex-boyfriends,
That's
but like
awesome.
see them, see them
Wow.
later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope I answered. I forgot what the original question was, but I hope that was a proper answer.
Oh, absolutely. Great answer.
I'm kind of curious. So, like, you know how like dark humor and we're saying trauma and things like that. Was there anything about like what was it that kind of propelled you into atheism? Like, was there anything in particular, or just as you're experiencing life, it just kind of goes that way when you're around exposed to different thought?
Yeah, a little bit of both. So I remained a devout Christian until I was probably 25 or 26. And I remember like I would do a comedy show that was on Sunday mornings at Second City. And then I would go to church afterward. And like comedians would go hang out or get brunch and they'd be like, oh, Sydney's got to go to church. Like, we'll see her later. They were very respectful about it. Which you would think like comedians would roast you about it all the time, but they never touched that. They're like, no, Sydney's got to go to church, see her later. But you know, there was the usual stuff that I think people cite as like not making sense, like why is it that God only creates miracles for some people and not others? You know, why is it that my
Mhm.
mom has been a devout Christian her entire life and yet her husband was still taken from her at such a young age with 2 little kids? You know, why did that happen to me? You know, why was I raised without my dad when I definitely could have used my dad around? You know, um,
Right.
and things like I lost a kidney when I was like 21, just stuff like that, where you're like, if God is really looking out for me, why does so much shit happen? Like, why does all
Mhm.
this bad stuff happen to people I love? It wasn't just like selfish, it was stuff happening to people I love. Like, why does God allow for the horrible wars to happen and genocides to happen? And, you know, people say he's got a reason for everything. And I'm like, there's no reason good enough to make me like the guy. There's no reason. I'm sure he's got a
Mhm.
reason, but whatever it is, I don't like him.
Right.
He's not a nice guy. Like, I'm sorry. And at first it was Christianity that didn't make sense. And I thought, you know, maybe I should explore Judaism. Maybe I should explore something else. Um,
Mhm.
but I just, so I was in debate for many years. The way that I paid my way through college was I was a debater. And it just didn't make sense to me that Monday through Saturday, I needed facts, I needed evidence, I needed good evidence. If it was just Wikipedia, get out of my face with it.
Right.
Find me real evidence. I need sources, I need validity. And yet on Sundays, I didn't need any of that. And
Right.
yet, that was supposed to be my eternal salvation at question, you know? And I started to kind of think about that with everyone. Like the adults in my life, they can prove you wrong with facts and evidence on anything in 30 seconds. Very intelligent people, right? Like my mom is getting her PhD. Like I was surrounded by intelligent people.
Wow.
And yet on Sundays, that doesn't matter. We don't need to see these things. We don't need to have answers
Out
for
the door.
everything. And I'm like, interesting. So why can't you just have faith that I am right most of the time and stop Googling stuff to try and like prove me wrong? I don't understand. So,
Right. Make
and
it
then,
make sense.
right. And so I had started questioning things for several years. A lot of things didn't make sense. Like once I got in trouble at church because they, of course, separated the men from the women. I will say the boys from the girls because we were young, but still of like marrying age in the church. And we were being taught by this woman who, because she was married for a year, she knows like everything because that's how like church works. Um, and she was teaching us about how like it's our job to like serve our husbands, yada yada yada. It's not our job to like try to be preachers. And I, not trying to be an asshole at all, was like, what's the difference between what you're doing and preaching? And she was like, what do you mean? And I was like, you're sitting in front of all of us, telling us God's word, teaching us how to be better Christians. What is it that you're doing? I was genuinely curious. I wanted to know what this was. If it wasn't preaching, what was this? And like, you could see like the cogs, like just kind of, right, just that sort of thing. And like, I was being punished for asking questions that I thought were very good questions. And I still wanted the answer to, even after I didn't get the answer. I'm like, but I still need my question answered. And then I did shrooms,
Oh,
and that was
goodness.
the nail in the coffin. And then I did shrooms. And you know,
I
like
like that.
when you smoke weed and you've got questions and you write them down the next day, you're like, these are the dumbest questions I've ever heard of like in my entire life. Like these are the stupidest. But when I was tripping, you know, on shrooms, and it was like, hey, like, this is your thoughts, knock, knock, knock. We've got these questions. And they were good questions. And they were all political and religious questions. Because at the time I thought, and this is ridiculous to me now, but at the time I thought I was a Christian Republican Southern girl. Like that's what I really thought. This was like prior to 2016 when like it was a different thing to identify, I feel like, as those two, or at least at my age it was. But when I woke up the day after I had shrooms, I was like, I don't believe this stuff. It doesn't make sense. I'm a Democrat. I'm, an atheist. Like it just, I had the questions for a long time, but it's like a part of my brain opened that just wasn't going to close again. It's like, nope, this is us now. This is who we are as a person. And I'm grateful every single day for that experience because I don't know who I would be if I had not had that experience. It changed I honestly, truly believe that it changed my intelligence. It changed my critical thinking process. It changed my tolerance towards people that weren't like me. It literally rewired how my brain worked. And I woke up and I was like, I did a lot of crappy stuff when I was younger. I said a lot of crappy things. I had like a small mind. From now on, I'm going to try and be the best person that I can possibly be starting today. And I'm so grateful for that experience because it was wild. I do not recommend trying to watch Hunchback of Notre Dame while on shrooms. It's the scariest movie you've ever seen in your life. Horrible mistake. I tried to recreate that experience like a year later. Girl, I was
I just gotta have images of him in the gargoyles.
So listen, I was having like a horrifying time and I realized I wasn't even past the opening musical number. Like I was having like the worst experience. I didn't even get past the part where like the little jester is like singing and dancing. I hadn't even gotten to the part where she like leaves him on the step of the church. I was like, this is too much. Like so don't do that. But yeah, changed my life instantaneously, like overnight. But I like to think it wasn't instantly. It was a long time coming.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, like accumulation of things. And then, just sometimes you have that pivotal epiphany moment where just things kind of start clicking for you. Yeah, I think we all kind of feel that same way. It's not just necessarily one thing that breaks that camel's back.
Exactly. And like I said, it's like there was a box that I was like forcing closed because I feel like, I don't know about your experiences, but I feel like when you first start to question things, you force it down. You're like, no, I'm going to double down on Christianity. I'm going to make sure I'm even better as a Christian because I'm so scared that it's like letting go. Yeah. Yeah.
I do that just to make sure.
That causes all that nice religious trauma, the self-guilt and shame and all of that.
Yes. Yep.
But girl, absolutely love the way that you decided to kind of exit religion. You just took and went full on heathen. You're going to do shrooms. You're going to be a Democrat, and then you're going to start saying you're an atheist. I mean, wow, the trifecta.
Shaved half my head. Yeah.
No, my goodness.
I went through like that period. I think most people go through where like for like a couple months, you're like that angry atheist. You're like, yeah, I want to watch all the debates. I want to watch everything that's like so-and-so destroys so-and-so. Like
in your face.
Yeah. But then it's you relax and you're like, grow up.
Like, it's okay. It's okay. Although I do think that those debates can be very helpful if you're trying to deconstruct, because it kind of puts you in that position of like, oh goodness, do I think like that? Do I actually look like that? Because that looks a little stupid.
Yes. Well, and not only that, but like, especially when they're interviewing people that as a Christian you find to be important people. And you're like, oh, they're proving wrong this person that I thought for sure was like blessed by God to be able to answer like anything. Yeah. So the debates themselves, I think, are very helpful. It's just that like rebellious teen phase you go through where you're like, I'm going to like, whether you ask or not, I'm going to let you know, that you're just like, calm down. And maybe that was just my ADD. I don't know. Who knows?
Well, it looks like we have a question from our viewership, and it's from Secular Rarity, by the way. Hey, Secular Rarity, we love you. By the way, SR and I will be on our call-in show tomorrow night here on Skeptic Haven, so be sure and check that out. So SR asks, what has been one of the strangest things you have heard in one of your interviews on your podcast?
I'll go with the interviews that are out that you can listen to. There's a couple that I can't put out. Probably the weirdest one I've ever heard is I talk to a lot of cult survivors. And some of the things I hear about what their parents justify as like allowed and not allowed, or like godly and not godly, is just absolutely wild. And the weirdest part is it sounds pretty in line with what the Bible says. Like, that's the weirdest part, is like the things that they're like, no, you can't do this and you can't do that. You're like, the Bible does actually say that. Like, the Bible really does say those things.
Mhm.
And it almost makes you, in a weird way, stick with me here, it's going to sound weird for a second. It almost makes you
I like weird.
respect
Mhm.
cult leaders and like families in the cult and like parents, usually fathers in a cult, more than you respect just like run-of-the-mill Baptists, because at least they know what the Bible says and at least they're following the rules, right? Like, that's
Mhm.
like when you are just like a Kroger brand Baptist, you're like, hey, there's this weird part of the Bible that says if your daughter's not a virgin, you should take her out in the streets and stone her in front of the village. And they're like, no, that's not what that says. It was a metaphor. See, back then things were different and like yada, yada, yada.
Mhm.
Cults are like, yeah, so don't do that.
Don't mess around.
Mhm.
Yeah, like don't,
F
or
around,
like,
find out.
yeah, like, hey,
Yeah.
like the Bible says you shouldn't eat pork, you shouldn't wear mixed fabrics, and you're doing both on Super Bowl Sunday. And you're like, no. See, back then it was different because like when you ate pork, you got sick, and like they were telling people, blah, blah.
Mhm.
And
Right.
fundamentalists are like, so don't. Like, so you're just
Right,
gonna wear
yeah.
cotton from now on, like, and it better
Right.
touch the floor. Yeah. So it's
Forever
like,
and always.
it's messed up and I hate it, but at least that makes more sense because it's literally following the rules that it says in the Bible. But then,
Like, that's respectable.
right. You're like, at least you know
If you're
what
gonna
you're
go
talking
for it,
about.
go for it.
At least you're quoting the, I don't know, it's weird. It's like a weird, it's like whenever you're watching a show and the main character is a bad guy, but also you're rooting for them. Like, that's kind of how it feels. It's like, I don't like you.
Right.
You're a bad
Right.
person. I would never want your kid to experience living with you ever again. But at least you know the Bible. Like,
Yeah.
at least you
Yeah.
know your scripture.
Yeah.
So those are always the weird ones where you're like, why would they do that? Like, that sounds crazy. And then the person who I'm interviewing is like, well, I mean, if you read, Deuteronomy 3:5 or whatever, you're like, oh shoot, like, yeah, you're right, it does say that. Wow, I totally forgot about that. Whoa. So it's like, it's this range of emotions where you're like, I'm so glad they're out of it and they feel comfortable talking about it. But that's wild that guy is actually following the Bible. Whoa.
Mhm.
So that's the weird part. And also one of the weirdest parts is like when somebody triggers a memory for me and I'm like sent back to like VeggieTale PTSD. Like, that's
Oh, Veggie
that's also
Tales,
weird
yeah.
too. Yeah. Or like
Mhm.
Awanas, or like they'll say a scripture and my brain will like autofill the rest and I'm just like, not today,
There's a
Satan.
lot of that,
Not today. Like, I
Jesus,
cast you
take the
out.
wheel.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You're like, Aaron Ra, save me, please. I pray to thee, Aaron,
That's
please.
the kind of sky daddy that we need. We don't
Right.
deserve it, but that's the kind of sky daddy that we
Yeah.
need. Aaron Ra.
Yes.
Father, Son,
Oh my
Aaron
gosh.
Ra. Yeah.
If you're watching this, please forgive us of our sins.
Yeah.
Lord Ra.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, I feel
do you-
washed in the blood of the Aaron Ra Church. Sorry.
Oh,
Continue.
Or the beer of the
whole-
Arn Raw.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the spirit of the beer, may it wash over you and you're new again, just as it should be.
Exactly.
Do you get pushback at, like, I'm assuming that you talk about your like religious experiences like in your comedy, your storytelling and whatnot.
Mhm.
Do you ever get like pushback from the audience? Like, do you ever get people who are like, the fuck?
So oddly enough, I've done stand-up, I've done storytelling, I've done improv, I've done some sketch stuff, I've put stuff on like Amazon before. Talking
I've done
on
some
like
sketch stuff too, but
Yeah,
not that
yeah.
kind of sketch.
I've done some sketch stuff, if you know what I mean.
Right.
But oddly enough, anytime I talk about religion, especially like with my podcast or like in my comedy, I get nothing but positive response, even from people who disagree with me. It's so odd as a woman to like put stuff on the internet and get nothing but nice comments, and you're like, wait a second, what's going on here? Like, what is this? Yeah, no, people usually, even religious people, laugh at like the jokes and like the because I think it's because even in my stand-up, I try to be respectful. I am my number one target. I don't like to roast other people. I don't like to take seats from tables that I don't belong at. It's usually I'm making fun of myself. I'm calling myself a redneck. I'm calling myself white trash.
Yeah.
I'm making fun of my experiences. So everybody whether they're atheist, whether they're Christian, whether they're Northern, whether they're Southern, they feel like they're joining in on the joke instead of they're the butt of the joke.
Mm.
And that just seems to be a much more successful style I have found than the years where I tried to be like edgy or whatever.
Mhm.
And if people think like, oh, like just try being a little tougher. It's like, it's not about that. The quality is literally better in my personal experience when I make myself the joke and I allow people to join in on that joke as opposed to making them the butt of the joke.
This is a great
That makes
segue
so
for
much
a
more sense.
question from someone in our viewership. And it's Logan Fisher asks, is there a religious topic you avoid in your comedy? Great question.
If it has anything to do with religions that aren't mine, like I would never make a joke about like Islam or Judaism. I would never make a joke about anybody I've spoken to like on the podcast or anything like that. Like I talked to this person and they said, yeah, no, if it's about me, if it's about like my experiences, it's all out there. Like it's pretty much, it's whatever, you know, because to me, it's like, if you lived it, you can joke about it all you want. It's as long as it's true, you can joke about it all you want.
It's your
like,
life. It's your story.
Right. And if somebody else is like, well, I'm Baptist and I didn't grow up that way. I'm like, well, good for you. That is wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Would you like a Thank you. Would you like a cookie? Oh my gosh.
Thank you for your opinion. I love it. Yeah.
Because it really is. That's the purpose, is that you're telling your story. You're inviting the audience in instead of punching down, which I really appreciate. I really find that kind of comedy, like you said, more entertaining. And because I don't have to go like, oh, that cringe, like I feel bad for like, you know, I don't enjoy. I guess I used to, because I was raised differently back in the day, like years ago.
I think
but
we
now
all
I'm like,
used to.
Yeah,
I think we all, I think like, especially like 2003 through 2010, like roast comedy was king. You know, we loved that stuff. We loved all the stuff, whether it was ours or there's somebody else's, you know, I'm sure there's clips out there that would get me canceled if I cared, but you know, but it's just like, it's like, what are you going to do? I've already shaved my head like to the scalp. Like there's not a lot you can do.
There's so much more you can do to like, I think it looks great. I mean, you rock it.
Thanks. I just got my first
it was an accident.
Post shave. I just got my first trim because it was like my hair grows like out before it grows down, so it was just like it was looking like a halo.
Yeah, you kind of need to fade it a little bit so you got a little bit of length. Yeah, I get it. I used to do hair, so I understand.
I've got this little Backstreet Boy thing going, you know.
I like it. Every little thing I do. Oh, sorry. That's not it's gonna be May. Okay, I got it out of the way now.
Had to get that out.
That was in sync, but you know what I'm saying. Did you say we had a question from the audience and I bypassed that, or
no?
Was that like a Iana go?
No, yeah, I've already done it. It's done.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm not in a time loop. Okay, guys, I'm on my high right now, personal high. I'm excited talking to a comedian. Okay. And is it comedian or am I supposed to say comedian?
I think it's just, I think in like 2018, they decided it was all just comedian, kind of like actor. Like people just say actor to describe everybody now. I don't, either way, I'm fine. Like I don't know, but I just keep it safe when I'm talking to people and just call them all comedians or all like actors.
Okay.
I don't mind either one.
Sure. Yeah, when I was writing it up, I was like, am I supposed to say comedian? Like, what is that? Is that just an accent? Like,
comedian.
I'm one of those comedians.
Putting them on
you know
a
what I'm
southern
saying?
accent.
Yeah. I'm from Arkansas and I'm a comedian. Yeah.
Oh, I freaking love it. So I guess your mom doesn't come and support your comedy shows, I'm assuming, because she doesn't know you're an atheist, or does she?
So I still don't know. I'm not sure. She told me years ago that she doesn't like podcasts. She told me years ago she doesn't like podcasts. Okay. So I know she's supportive of the podcast because she likes all the things, but like the view count doesn't change, and like she hasn't said anything to me about any of it. Okay. She supports my comedy. She's one of those moms where like to everybody else she's like, I love her comedy. To me, she's like, did you have to say that nasty thing? Like, did you really have to say that? And I don't even say nasty stuff, but like once I did a show at Dangerfields in New York and I didn't say anything nasty. I said nothing nasty. I told a normal set, but everyone else told Holocaust jokes. And she like laid into me. I was like, these are not my friends. I do not know these people. We met them at the same
Right. Don't
time.
associate me,
Yeah.
please.
And she was like, that's
Wow.
not funny. And like the one person who didn't tell a Holocaust joke told an abortion joke. And she was like, this is not funny. Like, I can't believe they would say this. And I'm like, I said none of these. I don't know these people. They're not my friends. I didn't book them. You met them at the same time that I did.
And see, now I'm really interested in the abortion joke.
I don't even remember what it was.
Yeah,
It was so like, it was so like,
it was bad.
I was like sweating.
A good abortion joke. It was a bad abortion
right.
joke.
And like I could feel like lasers from like her table just like burning my scalp.
Oh boy.
But I don't even remember what it was. I just remember I think I was on a show with like 12 comedians, and all of them told a Holocaust joke, and then one person threw in like an abortion joke, and I was just like, huh, like I was from Arkansas, like I had just gone there. That was like, you know what I mean? Like,
Arkansas. You should just walk on the stage. I'm from Arkansas.
And then it's conflicting because you're like, I would never tell a Holocaust joke. I think it's a terrible joke, but I also am not in a position to ever tell a Jewish person that they cannot tell a Holocaust joke. Like, so you're conflicted. You're like, which is it? Like, you know,
it's one of those where like, I don't know I don't think I should be laughing here. Like, I don't.
Right.
I
You're
don't
like,
feel right laughing.
You're like, the club loves this, which is wonderful. I don't, does it make me worse if I, like, what do I do? Right. It's very uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah. What do you do?
Gosh.
Well, how long have you been doing your podcast? Because we've been talking about that. How long have you been doing it?
It started in December of 2021. So a little over a year, like a year and 5 or 6 months or something like that. Yeah.
And how have you found that? Do you like doing it?
Love it.
Well, obviously you're doing it, but
Love it. It's like,
you get to meet a lot of people.
Yes, I enjoy it probably more than I enjoy stand-up and storytelling. I love it. It's like the perfect combination of meeting new people and also getting all the tea. You can ask them whatever you want. I'm the nosiest person. I am the nosiest person. And like, I want to ask them anything, and like, I can just ask them and they can just answer. And if they don't want to answer, I don't have to put that part in the podcast. Yeah. It's great. But most people, I've never had anybody be like, I don't want to answer that ever. I think because it's like so I talk to everybody. I talk to religious people. I talk to non-religious. I talk to atheists, spiritual, whatever religion you come from, whatever you still support. Like, I talk to everybody. Talk to scientists, psychologists, therapists. And so I think when they can go back and they can see that you like treat everyone the same, they are willing to talk to you very honestly. But I also fulfill that part of my like Southern woman where I'm like, I gotta know all the tea. Like, tell me the tea, like, sis. Like, I'm gonna word it differently, but like also, like, wow. And you can just like react to their life and just, I can literally just be like, what? Wow. And like, it's not rude.
Yeah.
So I love it. I've met so many really cool people. I've learned so much. Like Secular Rarity, met him. I met like many people. Yeah, like I was telling somebody, like, the webcam I'm using was recommended by a guest. Like, the lights I have in the back were recommended by a guest. StreamYard was recommended by a guest. Like, you just pick up a little bit, even from the people you don't agree with, like, religiously. You take away something different every time, and it's just awesome.
Do you have a general theme for your podcast?
Yeah, so it's called Growing Up Fundy. And I talk to people who grew up within any religion. It can be Islam. It can be, most of them are evangelical and fundamentalist. But it can be from any cult, any sect, any denomination. And we talk about how it impacted like who they are today. So a lot of the people are atheists now, or they're agnostic. Some of them are still religious, but they're in a different religion. Some of them are pastors and preachers. I talk to everybody. Some of them are YouTubers and podcast hosts themselves, and we just talk about their experience and like things they learned and things they took with them that they still practice and things they left behind and all sorts of stuff. We just talk about how they became who they are today versus what the beginning was like for them. And then I talk to people who specialize in stuff that's like adjacent to religion. So I'll talk to people about like history, psychology, stuff like that like might explain a little bit behind why people believe certain things or why they're so willing to join a religion, things like that.
Very cool.
I think one of the things that Sunny, you might concur, maybe you have something to add to it, but one of the things that I enjoy about talking to people is because I learn so much about myself too. Like, I don't always know how to I don't always know how to express myself, and that comes from my fundy background, ex Jehovah's Witness, because
Oh,
you don't
wow.
really learn how to express yourself. And I don't know, like I see other people living, similar familiar lives, different obviously because we don't have our own experiences,
Right.
but there's this takeaway and also this feeling of like, oh, I wasn't alone in
Mhm.
that
Yes.
feeling, you
Yes.
know,
Absolutely.
Yes. You have
which
so much in common.
comforting.
And then there's
Mhm.
like one or two tidbits where you're like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, like,
What?
okay, well, at least I didn't have that. Like I always there's sometimes that moment where like, okay, well, God damn, I'm glad I ain't got the I didn't have
Yeah,
the
you're
I
like,
got that
yes,
bullshit.
yes, yeah. Oh, no, no,
Yeah.
no, wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. But I love that, like, and something else that I've noticed is when you're talking to people, even from like totally opposite spectrum ends of the spectrum, um, you find out after like they open up and they talk to you and they're honest, you find out that a lot of times your end goal is the same. Just the
Hmm.
way that you feel is the correct way to get there is totally different. Like even when you're talking to people who still identify as like evangelical or fundamentalist, at the end of the day, like none of you want the little children to suffer. None of you want dogs to be homeless. None of you want people to die because they can't afford cancer treatment. Like, okay, so how do you plan on fixing that? Their responses to that
Right.
answer are just a lot different than my responses would be. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, when we
Radically.
right, when we lower that whole you have to defend yourself right now because it's a debate, and instead we're just having a conversation
Yeah.
and they're allowed to say whatever
Right.
they want, at the end of the day, you find out you actually have a lot more in common than you thought,
Mhm.
which I'm still trying to
Mhm.
figure out if that's scary or not for them or for me. I'm not sure.
No,
But
right.
That's
I think
human.
right, like I think the earth is round,
Right.
you think the earth is flat, but we all want the people on this round or flat earth to not suffer immensely while they're here, right?
I'm sorry.
Well, are we sure about that? Now, wait, hold on. No, I'm
Most
just
people.
kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to some extent people think that they're doing the right thing,
They
but
think, right. And that's
yeah.
like something else I've learned to be much, much more empathetic to people who I used to be like, what the are you thinking? Like, what are you
Mhm.
thinking? Because when you sit down and you talk to them, you're like, I disagree with literally everything you said. But at least now I understand that you truly think you're doing the right thing. You
Right.
truly think that you are helping them, you are leading them in the right direction. It's totally misguided and it's destructive and it's harmful. But at least now I've met you and I know that you're not lying about it to anybody. You're like,
Right.
it is just as genuine to you as mine is to me.
Right.
Yeah.
You just see yours a little bit differently than I do.
And the coolest
It is.
thing, along with what you're saying, is that I think one thing we have missed or lost in our culture, our social media type culture, is that we don't sit down and talk to people about these discussions face to face anymore. It
Yes.
is, you have the anonymity of the keyboard. And
Yes.
when we're
Mm.
having these
Yeah.
discussions, we're face to face, virtually. We're having to look at each other. We're thinking about the words that we say and how we say them. And then the people who view it see that as well.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. 100%. And that's why, like, I go by my name on everything. Like, I put my name on everything. It's on the Instagram, it's on the podcast, it's on the website, because I never want to like hide behind an anonymous like label or picture. I never wanted to be like, I want when people Google me, I want them to see like the like comedy overlapping with like the podcast stuff.
So
Because
yeah, both Ryan are
Right.
like, "Oh my gosh," because we
Yeah,
would
and here
also neither of it. Don't
but
mind
at the
us.
same
We're gonna
time,
stay
like
over here.
at the same time though, it
Shh,
can be
I'm
like
not here.
at the same time though, like in the past, I have been in my boss's office when they've been like, so I saw that TikTok about that time you tried a diaper. Like, you know, like
You
so,
weren't supposed to see that.
right. But my name was on it. It hit their feed or For You page or whatever, you know, that sort of thing. So it's like, while I do that and I feel confident about it, I completely understand why some people might want to have like a little animated logo or like a fake name or something. But like, you're either going to find my stand up or you're going to find my podcast. So it's like, it's out there. And if you're not going to hire me
Yeah,
or be my friend or whatever for either one of those, we probably didn't have a lot in common to begin with. I would have loved to talk to you, but
absolutely.
that's totally fine if you want to take yourself out of that knowing me pool or hiring me or
Mhm.
whatever, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I'm in my 30s. It's
I've
like I'm not
I've
going to be in any
told people
pageants.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, like you do you, I'm going to do me.
Mhm.
We don't have to agree. You know, I'm gonna move on from here. Maybe my content is not for you. Like
Yep.
I've had to ask people, like, please, like, block me, stop coming back because you don't like what you're seeing, but you're asking for what you're seeing to come across your For You page. Like, I don't know how else to expressly tell you that. Like, you're going to keep seeing this face and these ideas
Yes.
if you don't go away. It's all
Yes.
on you. It's in your
Yes.
control.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also like when you when you've been doing stand up for almost 16 years and people still think they can hurt your feelings,
Oh
it's like,
yeah.
brother, I monetize hurting my own feelings.
Right.
Like like what
This
do
is
you
what
like?
I do for a living.
Yeah, like there was once my brother was making like a thing on film for us, and I was sending him screenshots of all the worst comments I've ever gotten. And he calls me and he's like, "Are
Mm.
these real?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Are you okay?" He's like, "How? Like what?" I keep those. I keep a folder of the worst ones and a folder of the best ones because like
I'm
the
starting
best
to.
ones help me when I'm having a bad day. The worst ones help me when I'm a little high on my horse. You know what I'm saying? Like they keep you grounded. It's like I'm feeling a little too attractive today. I'm gonna read about what a fat ass I am and how I need to like stop eating so much pizza or some like shut my mouth or whatever. Um
Oh, that's too funny. I love it. So I'm guessing that with your podcast, I mean, when I read through all of the things you've done, so Second City, improv. So when you story tell, like, what does that entail? Like, how does that?
yeah. So I always tell the truth in my stand up, in my storytelling. I always tell the truth because one, if somebody doesn't like it, I'm like, well, it's true. So I don't know, like it happened. I don't know. But I use a lot of the same material for both. And so a lot of times I like to frame it as just like having a conversation with the audience. Like if I'm telling you a story, and we're sitting in our living room, you know, just having coffee, it's going to be the same delivery style as if I'm on stage, like talking to the audience about it. Because one, for the longest time, when I was, especially in my early 20s, you know, the hustle and grind culture is so real that like I really didn't have any other friends. Like that was it. That was like the people I spoke to when I was on stage. That was who I was talking to for the week, you know? But also because I've found that people love to relate to who they're seeing on stage, but what they love to relate even more to the person they see on stage is they love to feel better than them. If
Oh,
you
yeah.
can tell them a story that makes them feel better than you, they will love you forever, right? So you can make them laugh. You could be like, here's how we're the same. And they're like, oh, they're the same as me. And you're like, but here's how I'm worse than you. And I'm a dumbass. And they're like, well, at least I'm not you. I'm going to leave here feeling great about myself today because I didn't do that. Thank you for that treasure. Yeah. And it just, I don't know. I realized early on that like a lot of the stuff that happens in our day-to-day life, because it happens to us, we think it's normal. But when we start to tell other people about it and they're like, excuse me, what the fuck? Like, what are you talking about? It's like not normal at all. And they're very entertained by it, especially if you're telling the truth. Because at least you can say, like, none of this is made up. I'm telling the truth 100%, you know? So I hope that answered your question. I just tell the truth and I just keep it
Oh
like,
yeah. I
yeah.
often wonder sometimes. Well, like I'm guessing like a lot of these stories probably are made up, but then I do feel there's some stories you can I say you can just tell, but that I feel like the story is just so
That's
genuine, but and the comedy is just like it's a
what,
gift. Like,
yeah. What you're describing is 100% true. Is 100% true. I tell my students all the time, the audience knows when they're being lied to. I don't know how. To date, I do not know how, but what you're talking about is very real. They
you
always
just
know when the
feel
story is
it.
true and when it's fake and when they're being lied to. Yeah. And that doesn't mean it's not funny, but it's missing that element of relatability and like shock and surprise that comes when you're telling a real story. Like when I'm telling a real story and it's embarrassing or it's like cringeworthy, my face will still turn red. I'll do this like nervous chuckle like this where I'm like, I'm not laughing because I don't think it's funny. I'm just laughing because I can't believe I did that shit. That's like so like right.
Feel
And you
that.
get like a tightness in your chest that like makes your voice rise a little bit,
Oh God,
that's
yeah. Oh, I hate that.
that's real. Right. And you
Oh.
can't fake that stuff. I
No.
could get up and be like, here's a crazy thing that happened and like make up a story, but my body language just isn't going to be the same. And my favorite type of story to tell is one where like it gets worse and worse. And you can literally hear the audience being like, no, no. And
It got worser.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like people love that. They love that because they would never dream of getting up and telling those stories and like talking about some of that stuff. They love that. And, people are like, where do you come up with what you're going to talk about? I think about like the top 10 things I hope nobody ever finds out about me for the rest of my life. And I immediately use it. Like you can't blackmail me if I've already put it on YouTube. Like
Right.
it doesn't, you know what I mean? Yeah.
That's awesome. How cathartic is that? I wish we all were safe to do that. I mean, I think when you're a comedian you're doing a stand-up routine, you have a safety in that because people almost expect you to do that. Whereas the rest of us, if we went around telling those things, people are like, yeah, we need to get her some help.
Yeah. Well, they still say that. That doesn't go away. They're still like, are you like when I first shaved my head, one of my friends who's another comedian, she messaged me and she's like, if it's for fashion, looks wonderful. If it's for anything else, like emotions, give me a call. She's like, if it's if we're feeling feelings, just give me a shout. Yeah. And also, if you are 100% telling the truth, that's helpful. And if you know that you told a genuinely funny story that was like embarrassing, relatable, cringeworthy, and at no point used anybody else as a punchline, it was only you the whole time, it just feels a lot better too, where you're like, I made them laugh and I didn't have to take a crap on anybody. I didn't have to punch down. I didn't have to do any of that. But it takes a long time to get there. Like if you start comedy tomorrow, you're probably going to write some stuff that later on you're going to be like, oh, I wish I hadn't done whatever that was. And I'm sure there's bits out there where people are like this bitch, like here, cancel her or whatever. I'm going to be like, from what? From what? From 5 Patreon subscribers? Come at me. Come at me. Yeah.
Please, I want you to. I need more comedy.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Because it's not about you. It's about me. No, I like that. And I'm guessing that you probably, I would think that you probably have audience members who really connect with you for that reason. Has anybody just kind of foamed at the mouth, giving you their experience in a funny world after here? Yeah, I just knew it. I don't know why, but something just told me that would be the case.
Yes.
Not that that's bad. Not that there's anything wrong.
No. I meet people all the time. Like I was at a party like 2 months ago. It was like a belated New Year's party. And somebody came up to me and they were like, hey, like our friend said that you have that podcast. And I was like, yeah. And they just started telling me about the cult they grew up in. It was wild. And I was fascinated by it. I was like, please tell me. But you're standing in the middle of a belated New Year's party and you never think that like you're going to be like in a corner talking to somebody about cults or whatever. It does change like the trajectory of your life, especially when everybody else at the party is a comedian. Like you don't think you're going to be having that conversation. Yeah.
That is so crazy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen a shift, do you think, in comedy where people are trying to make it more like centric versus that kind of punch down comedy?
I have. I really have. And I don't, it's not what it's not what the older people are going to claim. It's like, you can't tell a joke anymore. You can't. It's literally like, oh, we don't have to be like mean to be funny. Like we don't have to. I think people are growing up. I think we're growing up. I think we're starting to recognize, oh, awesome. Thank you, Jessica. I think we're older. I think we're starting to realize things like the Me Too movement and like all these different movements that we're living through, I think are really opening people's eyes to this isn't a woke thing. This isn't a liberal agenda thing. This is, oh, I can be funny and like be nice to people. Like I can be funny and like only make fun of myself or only self-deprecate. And I truly think it's because, and like I won't take like a whole hour to talk about this, but I truly think it's because our generations are getting more and more open about like therapy and counseling, that it's not the first time these people have told their stories. So now they're comfortable telling these stories. Whereas before we were deflecting by like making fun of other people, making fun of other things, like telling fake stories that never happened. The last couple of generations have been so much more open about things like going to therapy, going to counseling, recognizing that a lot of people have a lot of the same like religious trauma that they had, that they thought they were suffering from alone. Because of things like TikTok, we're sharing so many ideas and experiences with each other now that we don't have to lash out to be funny. We can like keep it in, and we know that people will relate to that experience. I think that has more to do with it than like not wanting to offend people. It's more like, oh, actually, it turns out my true stories are very relatable and are funny, and I just didn't know that many people had the same experiences as me.
Right.
Well, really quickly, I wanted to let everyone know that if you like this type of content, please make sure to subscribe to either the channel, or you can go to our Patreon account. We were having a discussion about this. This is so hard for Ryan and I because we can't decide whether it's patrons. We want patrons from Patreon, and that just doesn't come out of my mouth very well. So I wanted to say thank you to our current patrons, which are, hold on, let me get back over to that, which are Eric Azoles, I hope I didn't say that wrong, Tara S., Brian, Denise Murphy, Dan D., Michael Wiseman, Kathy Cotton, Cindy Plaza, myself, Aaron Colson, and Phil Calderon. And don't forget to check out our other shows on Skeptic Haven. We have the Secular Soapbox on Wednesdays, The Bible Says What, The Sunny Spot, that's on Thursdays. We've moved it around, so it's hard for me to remember them all. The Global Atheist comes on, and Women Atheists Unload here today on Saturdays. And then we have Let's Talk on Sundays. So be sure and check all of that out.
Yeah. Well, first, before we go, I want to know, do you have anything up and coming? I saw that you have stuff on Amazon that people can watch, right? Y'all make sure there's links down here in the description, so make sure you click them and check out Sydney. But what do you have coming up? Anything that we can watch out for?
Yeah, so my special Trash is on Amazon Prime. So if you want to check that out, I'd love it. If you are interested in being a guest on Growing Up Fundy, if that's something that sounds like it kind of speaks to you, you can go to growingupfundypodcast.com, or you can look me up on YouTube. It's on my YouTube channel as well. I have links to the form you can submit anywhere you want. We're always doing that. I'm going to be at the Secular Student Alliance conference, if you're going to that, next month. So you can hear me talk about podcasts about Growing Up Fundy. But other than that, I'm always putting stuff out on my YouTube channel. I'm always putting stuff out on podcasts and things like that. So if you just subscribe to me wherever you find Sidney Davis Jr., there's going to be something coming out. It's a lot of parrot content. I have parrots. If you don't like parrots, don't subscribe to me. I talk about parrots a lot. I put videos of parrots.
Like real parrots. I love parrots.
I have 8 parrots. It happened real quick. I have 8 parrots. Yes.
Wow. She said it happened real quick, just like that.
Happened real quick.
Accidentally got
love them all.
Yes.
Yes. And I also have a dog. She's like laying right behind me, but there's lots of parrots in my house. So if you like parrot content, you'll find it on my Instagram and my TikTok and all that. But anywhere Sidney Davis Jr., that's going to be me. So
yeah, I want to go see the parrots.
Check my Instagram. There's videos, pictures. We just got a new one yesterday. She's adorable. Her name's Queenie. She's a little baby. Yeah, we rescue parrots from like all over. So we've got a lot of parrots.
I see. Oh, that's awesome. I see. And you even is there anything that you're like not doing? I guess since
acting.
You teach. We didn't even get to talk about the fact that you teach, right?
Yeah, I'm not acting. That is not what I'm doing. I'm not acting. So that's the one thing. Like,
there we go. We found something.
I'm a terrible actor.
Well, I mean, you acted like you had a good time today, so I don't know. I hope.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. This is really fantastic.
Yeah, we enjoyed having you. Would you have any like words of advice for our audience, for anybody maybe who's even thinking about like, I don't know, maybe not even just comedy, but like you said, storytelling, if comedy might not be your thing. I mean, something else. Do you have advice about that?
Yeah, 100%. Start writing down everything. In your phone, in your voice memos. If something strikes you as weird or embarrassing or cringy or funny, write it down, put it somewhere, like have it like in the back of your mind. And then
I do that because I'm old.
I mean, everybody should do it. And like, especially if somebody is listening to this and they are old, especially them, we could all learn.
Yeah. Do it.
Yeah. And then just do some looking around. Every major city has a comedy page. If there's a major city near you, there's always an active comedy page. You can lurk. You can look at the open mics and the shows they have available. You can just hang out. You can start seeing like repeat names of people who run shows and run open mics. TikTok is a great way to put your comedy content out there. YouTube, start a YouTube channel. A podcast is a really fantastic way to put your comedy, your stories, your sense of humor out there. Just, you have to start. You'll always wonder what it would be like if you don't start. So whatever it is you want to do, start. Just begin episode 1, video 1, TikTok number 1. That's the hardest part. And once you're past that, you're golden. Just, you got to start. Yeah.
Go for it.
I'm going to be the first one to bail. My husband is a musician, and we have to run down to Charlotte for his show. And so I'm going to say goodnight to you guys. But it was a great show, and I'm so glad that I got to meet you, Sydney, and I look forward to seeing you again. So you guys have a wonderful rest of the show, and I will see y'all later.
See ya.
So on that note, I think that we'll take us out. Sydney, it was really great talking to you. I'm going to make sure I hit all the buttons so that way I follow you and we can hook up maybe. Maybe I'll even fill out your podcast.
Please do. I was just about to say, I would love to have you on an episode or a live stream or whatever you prefer to do. I do live streams as well. So please seriously hit me up if that's something you're interested in. I would love to have you on one.
Absolutely. I will click the link and I'll push all the buttons and I will check that out. I would like to thank everybody in the audience and for everyone who asked questions. Y'all are so awesome helping us bring all the content that we have here, because we do have really good content. We have really great interviews. So as I wrap up today's episode, again, thank you, Sydney. Thank you for sharing like your incredible journey. It's been really inspiring. And I'm glad that you've like found a way to heal through humor and laughter. I kind of try to do that myself. And I think that there's a very special gift that you have to do it. And I don't have it, but you do. So I really appreciate you coming here and joining our community. And again, thank you everybody who likes and subscribes and pushes the content out. Yeah, it's been a great experience being here with you, and have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
I don't ever slow up, no, I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no, I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no, I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that, spitting slow, spitting fast. I could roast, I could gas, think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past and the pettiness. A reflection of the emptiness, hilarious. You think you're worth my time,